The day had started like any other. Tamara Jackson, 34, stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her scrubs, making sure every inch of her appearance was in place. She wasn't just any doctor. She was a trauma surgeon at St. Thomas Medical Center in downtown Chicago, one of the best hospitals in the city, and she had the track record to prove it. She had saved lives that most people wouldn't have thought could be saved, but today she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Stay with us to see what unfolds next. Her phone buzzed as she made her way out the door. The name on the screen made her pause. It was her boss, Dr. Richard Halstead, the hospital's chief of surgery. "Tamara, I need you to come to my office as soon as you can." The voice on the other end was terse. No small talk, no pleasantries. Something in his tone made her stomach twist. It wasn't the usual morning call to discuss a case or a new procedure. This felt different. She walked briskly to her car, the sun just beginning to peek over the skyline. The cool breeze did little to calm her nerves. As she drove to the hospital, her mind raced through the possibilities, perhaps a promotion, a new responsibility. But somehow, it didn't feel like that kind of day. By the time she walked into Dr. Halstead's office, the air felt heavy, suffocating. He was sitting behind his desk, papers scattered in front of him. His face was unreadable, which only made Tamara more anxious. "Tamara, I won't beat around the bush. We've had complaints about your work," he said, his voice flat. Her heart skipped a beat. "Complaints? I've been working here for 6 years, Richard. What complaints are you talking about?" He looked up, meeting her gaze for a brief moment before glancing down again. "Your last few surgeries, we've seen a decline in results. Your methods, while innovative, aren't what we expect. The board has decided that we're going to let you go." Tamara's world seemed to stop. Let go. She blinked, trying to process his words. She had saved lives that others thought were unsalvageable, had been the one everyone turned to when things went south. She had never felt like a failure, but now, in this moment, it felt like everything she had worked for was crumbling in front of her. "This is about my race, isn't it?" The question escaped her lips before she could stop it. Dr. Halstead shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Tamara, this isn't personal. It's a decision based on your performance." Her heart was beating wildly in her chest, but she stood her ground. "You and I both know that's not true. I've given this hospital everything. You can't just throw me away like this." There was a long silence. Dr. Halstead didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The truth hung in the air like an unspoken word. Tamara had been passed over for promotions, ignored during rounds, and had been forced to work twice as hard as anyone else to be seen as an equal. But now she was being discarded, and nothing she said would change that. With shaking hands, Tamara grabbed her things and walked out of the office. She had worked so hard to prove herself, and this was how it ended, without so much as a thank you for her years of service. Hours later, Tamara was at O'Hare International Airport, waiting for her flight to New York, where she had planned to attend a conference on surgical advancements. The weight of the day was still heavy on her shoulders, but she tried to push it down. She needed to focus. The conference could be her chance to reset, to figure out what came next. The terminal was crowded, as usual. People rushed by, completely unaware of the quiet storm inside her. She needed a distraction, anything to stop the whirlwind in her mind. But then, in the midst of the chaos, she heard a loud crash. She froze. People were shouting, others were backing away, and the crowd parted like the Red Sea. In the center, a man lay crumpled on the ground, a suit disheveled around him. He was unconscious, and the people surrounding him looked paralyzed by fear. Tamara's instincts kicked in before she could stop them. She pushed her way through the crowd and knelt beside the man. He was pale, his breathing shallow, his pulse nearly non-existent. It took her a moment to recognize him, Caleb Carter, a name she had heard countless times, but never expected to see in front of her like this. Caleb Carter was the Chief of Staff of the U.S. Senate, one of the most powerful political figures in the country. He was 50 years old, a man whose reputation preceded him. Known for his decisive leadership and unwavering principles, his name was synonymous with power. But now he was lying lifeless in front of her, his eyes closed, his body still. Someone called 911. Someone screamed from the crowd. But Tamara didn't need to wait for anyone. She had taken an oath, and she would honor it. She moved quickly, applying pressure to his chest to assess for any signs of life. His heart was barely beating, but it was there. Just barely. Tamara didn't waste a second. She worked swiftly, clearing the area around her, her mind focused solely on the task at hand. But she could feel eyes on her, the weight of the crowd's gaze heavy on her shoulders. They didn't know who he was. They didn't understand the implications of what was happening. But she did. If she didn't act now, Caleb Carter might die. "Is there a doctor here?" someone shouted from the crowd. Tamara barely heard them. She had no time for formalities. She needed to save this man, no matter who he was. Her hands moved with practiced ease, her fingers pressing against his chest, her focus unyielding. The seconds felt like hours. The air in the terminal was thick with anticipation. Then, finally it happened. Caleb Carter gasped, his body jerking as his heart started beating again. The crowd gasped in collective disbelief. He was alive. Tamara collapsed back on her heels, gasping for air herself. It had been too close. Too close. Tamara sat back, the rush of adrenaline still coursing through her veins. As Caleb Carter's breath became steadier, his eyes fluttered open, disoriented at first, but then focusing on her. For a moment they simply stared at each other, two strangers, from completely different worlds, now bound by something much bigger than politics or power. The crowd had grown silent, unsure of what to do next. Phones were already out, cameras pointing in their direction, capturing the moment. But Tamara didn't care about the cameras. She had just saved the life of one of the most influential men in America, and at that moment, all she could think about was whether her own life, her career, her dignity could be saved, too. What happened? Caleb Carter's voice was weak, strained, as he tried to sit up. The man who only minutes ago had been a towering figure of authority was now just another person, vulnerable in the face of death. "You collapsed," Tamara said, her voice steady but tinged with the remnants of the stress that had been building in her chest. "You were having a heart attack. I had to perform CPR." He blinked several times, looking around, still processing. The chaos around them had quieted, the crowd now more curious than concerned. A few murmurs rippled through the people who had gathered, a mix of awe and confusion. "You saved my life," Caleb said, his voice cracking as the realization set in. He looked at Tamara, his expression softening as he fully regained his composure. "Thank you." Tamara didn't answer right away. The weight of his words was not lost on her, but she couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in her gut. Here was a man who wielded unimaginable power, a man who had just been moments away from death, now saved by a black woman who had been tossed aside like yesterday's news. The truth of her firing still lingered in her mind. She had been told she wasn't enough, her worth dismissed by people who hadn't cared to understand her struggle. Yet here she was, a woman who had been systematically denied opportunities, saving someone who had the world at his feet. "Are you okay?" she finally asked, pushing those thoughts aside. Her duty had been fulfilled, but her heart still weighed heavy. Caleb looked at her, his eyes searching hers. There was something about her, something real, something raw that seemed to get under his skin. "I am now," he said quietly, pausing before adding, "But you're not okay, are you?" Tamara froze, caught off guard by the question. She had been so focused on saving him that she hadn't stopped to think about what this day had done to her. The emotional toll of being fired from a job she had given everything for was crushing. Her career, her sense of belonging in a world that constantly told her she didn't belong, had just been shattered. She didn't know how to explain the way it felt. Not really, she admitted, her voice softer now, almost vulnerable. But I'll manage. Caleb's eyes softened, and for the first time he seemed to see her not just a doctor doing her job, but a person. A woman with dreams, aspirations, and a life that had been upended. As paramedics arrived to take over Caleb's care, the crowd began to disperse, the excitement of the moment slowly ebbing away. But the ripple effect had already started. Word had spread, and within minutes, news outlets were reporting on the incident. Tamara had become an unexpected hero. But what did that mean for her? A few minutes later, Caleb's personal security approached her. He was a tall, broad-shouldered man who looked like he could be an ex-Marine. He held up a phone to Tamara. "Mr. Carter wants to speak with you," the security guard said with a polite nod. Tamara blinked, still trying to process what had happened. Caleb Carter, the man who had just been revived in front of a crowd, wanted to speak to her. She took the phone with shaky hands. "Hello?" "Dr. Jackson." Caleb's voice came through, calm but laced with authority. "I don't know how to thank you for what you did today." Tamara wasn't sure what to say. "You don't need to thank me. I did what anyone would do." "You saved my life," Caleb said again, the weight of his words sinking in, "and I don't take that lightly. But there's something I need to ask you. I need you to come with me." Tamara hesitated, glancing at the crowd and the media now swarming the scene. She didn't have time for more drama. But something in Caleb's voice, the sincerity, made her stop. She had just saved his life, and for the first time in a long time someone was offering her a chance to be seen. Maybe not just for what she could do as a doctor, but for who she was. "I'm not sure what you mean," she replied, her heart pounding. "I'll explain when you get here," Caleb said. "Please, I owe you that much." An hour later, Tamara was in a sleek, black SUV heading to an undisclosed location. She had been whisked away with little more than a brief explanation from Caleb's team. The entire time, her mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. What was happening? Why was she being invited into this world she didn't belong to? The car finally stopped in front of an unmarked building, its glass exterior reflecting the setting sun. Caleb's team led her inside, and she was greeted by a tall man with an easy smile. "Tamara, it's a pleasure to meet you in person," he said. "I'm Daryl Knox. I work closely with Mr. Carter." Tamara nodded, still on edge. "Where's Mr. Carter?" "He's waiting for you in the conference room." Daryl gestured toward a hallway that led deeper into the building. Tamara followed him down the hall, her heart in her throat. She had no idea what to expect. All she knew was that her life had just taken an unexpected turn, and she had no clue what came next. The soft hum of the elevator filled the silence as Tamara stood next to Daryl Knox, trying to steady her breathing. Her mind was spinning in 1,000 directions. The events of the day felt like a blur fired from her job, saving the life of one of the most powerful men in America, and now this. The elevator doors slid open, and Daryl gestured for her to step out. Tamara hesitated for a second before stepping into the bright, modern lobby. The walls were lined with expensive art, the floor gleamed under the soft lighting, and everything screamed power, a stark contrast to the uncertainty she felt inside. Daryl led her down another corridor to a large conference room. Through the glass windows, Tamara could see Caleb Carter sitting at the head of a long, sleek table. He stood as she entered, his expression a mix of gratitude and something more serious, something that felt heavier. "Dr. Jackson," Caleb said, his voice warm but with an underlying seriousness that gave Tamara pause. "Please have a seat." She did as he asked, the weight of the room settling around her. She had no idea what she was walking into, but something in Caleb's demeanor told her it wasn't just about thanking her for saving his life anymore. First of all, Caleb began, his gaze steady on her. "I want to apologize for the way you were treated earlier today. No one should ever feel like they're disposable, especially not after giving everything to a career. I understand that better than most." Tamara swallowed hard. The words felt like a balm on a wound she didn't even know was bleeding. It wasn't just the apology, it was the recognition of something deeper. He understood. "Thank you," she said quietly, still grappling with the overwhelming emotions bubbling up inside her. "But I don't think that's enough. I've worked my whole life for something, and in a single moment it was taken away from me. All because of the color of my skin, because I was never given the same opportunities or respect. I've been fighting a system that doesn't want me to win, no matter how hard I work." Caleb's expression shifted, and Tamara saw a flicker of something, guilt maybe, or maybe genuine regret. He leaned forward slightly, his voice softer now. "I've seen that kind of injustice in the systems I've been part of," he said, his words carrying weight. "And that's why I wanted to speak to you today, Dr. Jackson. I've been thinking a lot about what I owe you, not just for what you did for me, but for what I failed to see all these years, what people like you go through every single day. I want to make this right." "Right?" Tamara's brow furrowed. "Make it right? What do you mean?" Caleb sat back in his chair, taking a deep breath as if gathering his thoughts. "I'm offering you a chance to be part of something bigger, something that could change the way things are in medicine, in politics, in society as a whole. I want you to be part of my team, my new initiative. It's about creating opportunities for people who've been overlooked, people who've been dismissed by the system. It's about using the power I have to amplify voices like yours, to make sure people like you are no longer invisible." Tamara blinked, processing his words. Was this a joke? Was she really sitting here, listening to one of the most powerful men in the country offering her something like this? It felt surreal. "I don't understand," she said, shaking her head slightly. "You don't even know me. You just met me. What makes you think I'd want to work with someone like you?" Caleb looked at her with a quiet intensity. "Because Tamara, I see you. I see your potential. And I know you've been held back by forces you can't control. I want to help change that. You have skills, knowledge, and a drive that could change this world. I know how much you've had to fight for everything you've achieved. What I'm offering is the chance to keep fighting, but this time with more support, with real power." Tamara looked down, the weight of his words pressing down on her chest. She had spent years fighting for respect in a system that seemed designed to hold her back. Now she was being asked to join forces with a man who represented that system. The irony wasn't lost on her. But there was something about Caleb's sincerity, something about the way he wasn't just offering her a seat at the table, but a chance to reshape the table itself, that made her pause. What if this was her chance to make a real difference? What if this was how she could finally create the change she had always dreamed of? "I'm not saying yes yet," Tamara said, her voice firm. "I need to think about this. I've been burned before, Caleb. I've been given promises before, and they've turned out to be nothing more than empty words." Caleb nodded, understanding in his eyes. "I get it. You don't trust me right now, but I'm asking you to trust the mission. This isn't just about me. It's about what we can do together." The room was silent for a moment as Tamara weighed his words. She thought about all the years of struggle, all the time she had been overlooked and undervalued. She thought about the lives she had saved, the people she had helped, and how, in the end, it was always up to her to prove she was enough. Could she trust him? Could she trust this? Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter now. "If I join you, it's not because of the title or the power. It's because you're willing to give people like me a real chance. But I'm warning you, if I'm going to do this, I'm not doing it just for me. I'm doing it for everyone who's been ignored, everyone who's been pushed aside." Caleb leaned forward, his eyes locking with hers. "That's exactly why I want you on this team, Dr. Jackson. Because you're not just thinking about yourself, you're thinking about all of us." The rest of the meeting passed in a blur. Caleb laid out his vision, and Tamara listened carefully, her mind racing as she processed the enormity of what he was offering. This wasn't just about a job, it was a chance to be part of something that could change the course of her life, and maybe even the lives of others who had been left behind by the system. By the end of the meeting, Tamara was still unsure of what the future would hold. But for the first time in a long while, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. Maybe this was the start of something different. Maybe this was the beginning of the change she had been fighting for all along. The days that followed were a blur of meetings, phone calls, and paperwork. Tamara hadn't signed anything yet, but the idea of what Caleb was offering her lingered in her mind, gnawing at her with every waking hour. It wasn't just a job offer, it was the chance to step into a world that had kept her out for so long. And yet, the decision didn't feel as clear-cut as it should have. The pain of being fired from her dream job still stung, and the idea of working with Caleb, someone who represented the system she'd always fought against, felt like a strange, unsettling contradiction. But as the week wore on, something shifted. She started thinking about the bigger picture, about all the other people like her who were never given the opportunities they deserved. She had spent so long trying to fit into a world that didn't seem to want her, and now maybe she had the chance to change that world. One late afternoon, as the sun dipped below the Chicago skyline, Tamara sat in her small apartment, staring out the window. She had just finished a call with Caleb's team, who had assured her that the role he was offering was a real one, a chance to influence healthcare policy, to create real changes in how marginalized communities were treated in the medical system. "Think about it, Tamara," Caleb had said earlier that day, his voice calm and persuasive. "This isn't about you or me. This is about making sure people like you aren't overlooked again. This is about giving people a real voice in the decisions that affect them." For the first time in days, Tamara felt like she was on the verge of something bigger than herself, something that could outlive her. But there was still a part of her that hesitated. It was then that Tamara got a text from an unexpected source, Samantha Harris, one of the nurses who had worked with her at St. Thomas Medical Center. "I saw the news about what happened at the airport," the message began. "You did something incredible, Tamara. But don't let them play you. Don't let Caleb Carter or anyone else use you as a token. You've earned more than this. If you need anything, I'm here." Tamara stared at the text, her heart sinking. Samantha wasn't wrong. For all Caleb's promises, there was still the question of whether he was truly committed to change, or if he was simply using her as a stepping stone. The cynical part of her, the part that had been bruised by years of systemic injustice, was wary. Was she just another pawn in a game of power and politics? But another part of her, the part that had saved Caleb's life, began to rise above the doubt. She wasn't anyone's pawn. She had been underestimated for too long, and maybe this was the time to prove just how much she was capable of. The following day, Caleb called. His voice was smooth but had a different edge to it now, one that Tamara couldn't quite place. "Tamara, I've been thinking," he began. "I know you're still weighing things and I get it, but I'm asking you to think beyond your personal experience. Think about the impact we can have together. The system is broken, and we can be the ones to fix it." Tamara took a deep breath, her mind still clouded with questions. She glanced over at her phone on the table, the messages from her friends and colleagues offering support, but also cautioning her to tread carefully. "Caleb," she said, her voice calm but firm, "I'm not just some tool for your agenda. I know you see what I can bring to the table, but I need you to understand something. I don't want to be another person who's used and discarded when it's convenient. I've been there before. I won't let that happen again." Caleb was silent for a moment, and then, surprisingly, he spoke with an authenticity that she hadn't heard from him before. "I'm not asking you to be anything other than who you are," he said softly. "I know what you've been through, Tamara. I get it, and I don't want to repeat the mistakes of the past. What I'm offering you is real. The change you've been fighting for, it's in your hands now. You can be the one to shape it." Tamara sat back in her chair, staring at the papers in front of her, the weight of his words sinking in. It wasn't just about a job, it was about ownership. It was about the power to create change, to break through the barriers that had held her and so many others back. "I'll do it," she said, her voice steady, finally feeling like the decision had clicked. "But it's not going to be easy. I won't back down. And if you want me to help lead this thing, then we do it right." We fight for people like me, people who have been overlooked for far too long." Caleb's tone softened. "I wouldn't want it any other way, Tamara." As the days passed, Tamara began to prepare for her new role. She had made the decision to join Caleb's team, but not without holding him to the promises he had made. The work was tough, but she knew that real change would require that kind of toughness. She had been through too much to settle for anything less. The project was larger than she could have ever imagined, tackling healthcare reform, pushing for greater access to care in underserved communities, and amplifying the voices of Black doctors and medical professionals who had been silenced for far too long. Tamara was no longer just a trauma surgeon, she was now an architect of change, a leader in the fight for equity in a broken system. But with every victory there came new challenges. The higher she climbed, the more resistance she encountered from the very forces she was trying to dismantle. It wasn't easy, nothing ever was for someone like her, but Tamara was no stranger to adversity. And for the first time in a long time, she felt seen. Weeks turned into months. Caleb Carter's initiative began to gain traction, and Tamara found herself at the forefront of policy discussions, spearheading efforts to ensure that the voices of marginalized communities were heard. With every piece of legislation they passed, every initiative they launched, the momentum grew. And Tamara began to realize that this wasn't just about one woman's fight, it was about a movement, a tidal wave of change that was slowly but surely washing away the old systems of oppression. And as she looked out over the horizon, standing on the edge of this new world she had helped create, Tamara couldn't help but smile. This was just the beginning. Months had passed since Tamara had taken the leap into the unknown, joining Caleb Carter's team. The work had been exhausting, challenging, and at times overwhelming, but it was also incredibly rewarding. With every meeting, every policy discussion, and every campaign she spearheaded, she could feel the impact of the change they were making. The voices of marginalized communities, the ones who had been silenced for so long, were now being heard. Tamara's work was changing the landscape of healthcare in ways she hadn't even dreamed of. From her early days as a trauma surgeon, when she fought for every opportunity and battled prejudice at every turn, to now standing at the forefront of a nationwide movement, she had come a long way. But it wasn't just about the work. It was about the realization that one person, one woman, who refused to be silenced could make a difference. Her journey wasn't just about climbing the ranks, but about breaking the chains that held so many others back. She had become a symbol of hope for those who thought they were invisible. She had fought for the chance to be heard, and now she was giving others the platform to do the same. The moment when Tamara realized just how far they had come was at a town hall meeting she hosted in a small, underserved community. As she stood before the crowd, hearing their stories and their struggles, she saw the faces of those who had felt invisible until now. "I never thought someone like me would have a voice in these conversations," one woman said, tears in her eyes. "But now, I feel like we matter." Tamara's heart swelled with pride. This was what it was all about, the power of being seen, the power of change. Tamara's journey wasn't just about overcoming adversity for herself. It was about empowering others. She had faced injustice, exclusion, and personal setbacks, but she never gave up. Instead, she channeled those experiences into creating something bigger than herself. Never let anyone define your worth. There will always be people who try to dismiss you, belittle you, or underestimate you. But your value isn't based on their opinions, it's based on your potential to make a difference in the world. Perseverance is key. The road to success is rarely easy, especially when you're fighting against a system that has been designed to keep you out. But perseverance, staying true to your mission, even when things seem impossible, will lead you to places you never imagined. You have the power to create change. No matter how small your voice may seem at first, it has the power to make ripples. Tamara's journey shows us that we all have the ability to change the world, one step at a time. And most importantly, Tamara's story is a reminder that sometimes the hardest struggles lead to the most meaningful victories. When you fight for what's right, you're not just changing your own life, you're changing the lives of everyone who comes after you. Tamara's journey may have started with a devastating loss, but it ended with a triumph that inspired so many others to believe in their own power. From a doctor who had been fired unjustly to a leader who sparked a movement, her story is a testament to resilience, strength, and the unwavering belief that change is possible. If Tamara's story touched you, if it inspired you to believe in yourself and in the power of change, then subscribe to our channel for more stories that uplift, inspire, and challenge the status quo. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it, because stories like this have the power to ignite change in all of us. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave a comment about what you learned from Tamara's journey,